the process that we have here does it. But it only does as much as each of us are prepared to put in. The salt, which is extremely important, is where all your work is, most of your work is done. And that's the symbol of salt. Now it doesn't really mean much. That's the symbol of matter. Now in order to get salt, you put a flame, that's a flame, to the matter, and the flame burns up. And as it burns up, this line goes. Does that make sense? That's the matter that is being purified by the fire that transcended. So the cross, we just get that. And that in itself is a duality.
So as the fire burns up, burns the vertical line?
Yeah. Leaving the salt. Well, that's matter.
Yeah,
when you set fire to it,
it turns matter into salt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now there's an image there of some salt in a thing burning, but the imagination's good enough. We can find it if you need it, but it's simple. And the relevance is basically that's your subconscious. All that stuff that runs around and you believe to be real and so forth. When things start to spiritualize in your life, the stuff gets running and you start to deal with the stuff and strip away the illusions of life. Well, that can be a painful process if they get ripped away. But either way, they go. Now what actually happens there is the spiritualizing process occurs when your soul starts to awaken within the egoic structure. Am I making sense? Mm-hmm. Now the soul is fire, the sulfur. Sulfur's fire. The symbol for sulfur that's the symbol for sulfur. These strange alchemic symbols are really hard. That's matter, and that's a flame rising from the matter. It's that simple. So when your soul gets in there, it starts to bring the stuff up. When you come in to the confines of energy, you all know what I'm talking about when I say energy. Energy will bring stuff up, be it the energy that comes down or the sexual energy. When we fall in love, the soul is brought into being. And initially, that process is quite magical. It's just magical, it's dynamic. And so many of us even realise that there's something beyond our limits, some sort of divine influx when we first fall in love. But as time goes on, the shit sort of hits the fan. And we don't sort of actually fall out of love, but all the stuff comes in and we start to become more defensive and close off. And even to a point where we put that flame out. Now, one of the arts, or for me the greatest art, is to take that love and develop with it. And it's a scary process. Because everything that is not love is an impurity. It's an illusion that takes us away from the real. Now, love is not sexuality either, but it really gets that fire going. Now you know of Kundalini? That's the inner fire within matter, the quintessence within matter, that the alchemists extract from the four elements. They work to extract that essence, that inner fire. The sexuality will stimulate that fire. But unfortunately for most of us, the energy's got to move through the seven centres. And besides, the base centre for it to get going is kind of like security. You know, if you're insecure, then there's not much energy going to get going. So if the energy gets triggered and it runs into all that hole, if you've got insecurity issues, it hits that, one, you can get sick, but it'll blow the insecurity stuff up till it's giant and it possesses you. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Now, that stuff isn't real, but we believe it's real, and that's within what we'll call the subconscious, for want of a better term.
So the Kundalini fire doesn't burn through that and dissolve it, it magnifies it?
Well, initially, yeah, in most cases there's a degree of psychosis with Kundalini. Unfortunately, when it occurs with people spontaneously and they go to the doctor, they get psychotropic or some sort of drugs doctors give, and it screws them up. What the art is to be able to know what's going on and to work through the material, create the alchemical salt out of the material. Now, when we create the salt, it goes through a burning process, and then the salt has to be digested or married into the sulfur and the salt, or back to the salt. What you learn from that process, what you gain from the process of the fire, of the stuff, as you work through it, is the workings of salt. Does that make sense? You're actually, as that stuff comes up and you start to work through it, you're putting a fire to it. That's the fire of consciousness. You're putting a fire to it and you're working your way through it, trying to find, purify it so that you get free of it. So that's the working of salt. But if we don't understand the workings and how it works, then the potential for psychosis or go and screw you or take them forever to, hello, how are you, mate? To get through that, not impossible, but it's hard work. So the energy hits the stuff, the security issues. Now, if we get past the security issues, it comes to here, which is instinctual, habitual patterns. You know, like you learn to drive a car, and after you learn to drive a car, you forget about it, you just drive. It's become instinctual.
Can I ask you a question on,
Yes.
You said that once the mercury and sulfur is extracted, doesn't need to be refined.
Well, in alchemy, sometimes the sulfur is extracted from the mercury and done a bit of work with, or to create stones and stuff like that. But initially, basically with a herbal extraction, you don't need to extract the sulfur from the mercury. It's just the one essence. It's the salt where the work's at. Does that make sense?
Where does distillation fit in?
Distillation's in the process of extraction and purification. But don't get ahead of yourself.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do now is just get a handle on the terminology. And my idea with this is to, once you have an understanding of the terminology and the procedures behind it, it's easier to relax into, there's some direction and purpose in what's going on here, and work with the process. And if the mind can be somewhat relaxed in knowing that there is a pattern and procedure to work with, then you're one step ahead. And also, there's things that you can learn.